guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, my top 10 router table safety tips. Well, it's been a while since I've done a top 10, and I thought it'd be a good idea this week on Alternative Tuesday. Considering I have a new router table that I featured a while back, I thought it would be a good idea to talk about safety tips on the router table.
Number 10.
Well, coming in at number 10 is not only a safety tip, but it is also about quality of work. And what that is the amount of material that you remove while using a router table. If you have a groove that you need to cut, or a dado, or whatever you want to call it, if you have one that needs to be cut and you're using the router table, don't take the whole thing at once. If it's a 1/2 inch deep dado or groove, take it in passes, multiple passes, raising that router bit up just a little bit each time. If it's something like a pattern bit where you're following a pattern that's attached to your stock, remove as much of the material with a different machine as what you can, whether it be scroll saw or band saw or whatever. Don't let the router table rip off too much stock. For starters, you're risking kickback, and that's something that a lot of people don't think of with a router table, but it is real and it happens and it is scary as heck. So don't take off too much material. Not only is it dangerous, but taking off too much material will chip and tear the material out, and it will not give you a good finish. The finish will be poor. It will have gouges taken out of it, pieces missing and broken. It is just not worth it. So guys, remember, less is more. Take off a little bit at a time, multiple passes, and your router table work will be much better, much cleaner, and much safer.
Number 9.
Well, number 9 is all about the fence. And this fence here on my system is rock solid. There is no play. It's a very beefy fence, which means that you can apply quite a bit of pressure to it as you're guiding your material through, and it's not going to flex. I know on some people's router tables, they like to have their fence and just clamp it down. Just make sure it's a solid material. You don't want this thing bowing and causing you problems. You also want to watch the gap or the space on a split fence like this. You don't want it too large, as you want your piece to pass over and be able to get onto the outfeed side of the fence without any deviation in its path. In other words, you don't want it dipping into that hole, because if it dips in, again, you're risking kickback from this bit that would be spinning here. So keep an eye on the gap and make sure your fence is made of some seriously solid material.
Number 8.
Well, coming in at number 8 is something that a lot of people take for granted, and that would be this sort of thing. And what these are, of course, are push sticks. And whether it be, again, commercially available ones or shop made, whether it be actual this style or something like the gripper here, which is more of a pad, use something to keep your hands away from that spinning bit. Now, there are times that you're going to have to use your hands to hold stuff, and I get it. I get it, because I have to do it too. There are some cases where you just cannot use any of this stuff. And if that's the case, I caution you just to be very careful. Keep your hands away from that bit, because it spins so fast, and it spins it can rather react so quickly and grab and pull that piece in, and honestly, your human nature is to hold on, and that can drag you into the bit. So where possible, guys, push sticks and pads, they're your friends.
Number 7.
Number 7 is all about climb routing. Now, The point of this is that you need to know all about it and what to do with it and exactly what it is. It involves which way you feed your material into that spinning bit. So let's head to the bench and I will try to explain to you what climb routing is. Well, climb routing refers to feeding your stock into the bit in an unconventional way, or the opposite of what we should be feeding it in. So if we have a router bit, how can I portray a router bit? Here we go, we'll do this. This is a router bit with this as its center axis, and we're gonna say that it spins this way. You got that? Normally, feeding into this bit, we would feed the stock this way on this side. If it's against the fence, we would feed it this way. That way, our bit is biting into our stock this way, just like this. It's tearing it apart, basically, and cutting it as it goes along here. That is regular routing, and that is, of course, if you take off too much stock, how it can chip along with the grain and that sort of thing. In climb routing, you go the opposite direction. In other words, as the bit is spinning, let me just draw another bit here. As the bit is spinning, just like this, you actually feed it with the spin of the bit. And what it does is, as the bit comes around, instead of chipping it kind of against the grain, it's nicking off pieces like this as it comes through. The problem with that is that your wood is traveling this way, your bit is traveling this way, and it allows the stock to be fired through, potentially dragging your little piggies into it. So you don't want to do that unless it's absolutely necessary. And where it could be necessary is on an odd shape. If you're routing around the edge of a circle where the grain is going this way, along this edge right here where the grain could break off and snap off the end of your circle, it is acceptable, I guess, to climb route from this point to this point in order to reduce the risk of catching grain and snapping it off and grabbing your piece. You just want to make sure that your fingers are clear, and you want to make sure that you're using some kind of push stick when you're climb routing. Let the bit hit the push sticks or the pads, not your piggies. So there you go. That's a quick explanation of climb routing, and basically only use it when necessary and never with a handheld router.
Number 6.
Well, at number 6, we are talking about featherboards. And featherboards are a great way to keep your fingers clear in order to hold down your stock. Whether it be holding it against a fence or whether it be holding it down to the table, let something like this do the work for you and free up your hands to concentrate on things like, well, like push sticks, let's say. So concentrate on what your fingers are in the whole grand scheme of thing and in relation to the bit, and let other devices, whether they are shop made or whether they're store-bought, let the other devices handle holding the work in place. They're designed for a reason. They prevent kickback on your pieces from your spinning blade, and as well free up your hands and allow you to concentrate on where your fingers actually are.
Number 5.
At number 5 is router table stability. And what that is basically making sure that your table doesn't move while you're using it. Now in my shop, most things are on wheels, and I would just like to point out the type of wheels that you should be using on your tools, and what they are is double locking. So in this case, the wheel swivels this way. As well, it can spin. And when you lock down a double locking wheel, it no longer spins and it no longer turns. That's a double locking, and if you have to have your tools on a mobile base, this is the type of wheel that you should be looking at, the double locking, so that nothing can move. Ideally, it is best to have them stationary so that you don't have to worry about the wheels. But there's nothing worse than running a piece of stock through a router table and suddenly having it walk away on you as you apply pressure to the fence. It allows for a very dangerous situation, and it's something that you want to avoid. So you're going to make your own router table, going to make it mobile? Perfect, I'm all in. But make sure you got some double locking wheels. They're a little more expensive, but they're worth every penny.
Number 4.
Well, number 4 is one of those things that everyone seems to forget about. And I see so many videos on the internet of guys using a router table and not using this stuff, and it scares the living bejeepers out of me. These guys are playing with fire. And what that is PPE, personal protective equipment. There's 3 things you want to look at to protect here. Number 1 is your eyes. Without your eyes, you can't see, and the router table can very easily flick stuff back at you. So protect your eyes, guys, because you want to be using them for many years to come. The next thing you want to protect is your ears, because without your ears, you can't hear. So, this may seem kind of silly to you, but really, think about it. That thing screams. You don't believe me? Put a decimal meter beside it and see what it reads. It is not good for your hearing. Get some hearing protection on. So now we've got your eyes protected, and of course you've got your hearing protected. There's one more thing you want to protect though.
Your lungs. Your lungs. Can you hear me?
I said your lungs. Guys, get a dust mask on, okay? I can't hear you. Get a dust mask on. You have to remember that the router table, power tools, sanders, that sort of thing, they kick up airborne dust that you just don't see. Stop inhaling this stuff. Stop taking the chance. I know it's uncomfortable. I know these things make your ears sweat. I know this thing gets condensated inside. I know that these get all dusty, but as uncomfortable as they are to use, how uncomfortable would you be sitting in the house doing nothing because your lungs are gone, your eyes are toast, and you can't hear? Get the PPE on and woodwork for many years to come.
Number 3.
Well, coming in at number 3 is one of these. And if you don't know what this is, then it's obvious that you don't use it. And what it is a starter pin. I see so many people on the internet that are freehand routing on their router table, and they never use the starter pin. The starter pin has a purpose, guys, and what that is it helps to prevent the spinning bit from grabbing your stock and ripping your hands into the blade, or pulling your stock out of your hands and giving you a near miss. What you need to do is you use this as a guide to get your piece started into the bit, hence the starter pin. And basically, you would just take your stock, line it up against your starter pin, and while the bit is spinning, you rotate it slowly into your bit to start your cut, and then guide it in against the pin and against the, if it's a bearing bit, then your bearing of the bit. Once it's started and the bearing is flush against your stock, you don't have the worries of grabbing this end and ripping it. So you're in about 1 inch now on the piece. Now you can pull away from your starter pin and run it along the bearing to finish your cut. So very important and very much neglected safety feature of all router tables is the starter pin.
Number 2.
At number 2, I have to bring up large diameter router bits. And I mean things like raised panel bits and that sort of thing. Guys, they're extremely dangerous. And they're dangerous because they spin at a higher RPM and they remove so much more material. So more material removal brings us back to our point at number 10, which is remove a little at a time. Well, you can't always do that with a large diameter bit, and because of that, there's a huge, and I mean a huge possibility of those bits grabbing and pulling. So you want to have all your PPE in place as well as your push pads or sticks, and know what these large bits are capable of. They are very damaging. If you can, you're better off to use a shaper, but if you are going to use the router table, be sure that you've got a good split fence, that you give enough gap for that bit. If you can take it in multiple passes, it would be best, but if you have to take it all in one, you really want to be careful. Just be aware when using larger diameter bits.
Number 1.
Well, it took a while, but we got here to number 1, and it is quite possibly the simplest thing to do and the fastest thing to do on a router table, and yet so many people neglect to do it, and it should be done on all power tools, and that is this. Unplug your tool. Disconnect all means of power before doing any operations on that tool, such as bit changes, maintenance, cleaning, filming and demonstrating. Whatever you need to do, do not have power connected to that tool until you're ready to do the process, like the actual cut. Table saws are the same way. I see so many guys take the chance, and honestly, if you've got a paddle switch, it doesn't take much for that paddle to hook on your apron as you back off and turn that saw on, and then you're in a lot of trouble, guys. You really are. Same with the router table. Paddle switches can hook on clothing and they can turn the machine on. These are electronic things, they're power things. They are designed to cut material that is much harder than your 10 little piggies here. Don't take the chance, guys, please. Unplug every tool before you do any kind of maintenance, bit change, blade change, setup, height adjustment, everything. Take the power out until you are ready to make the cut. And there you have it. My top 10 list of router table safety tips. Guys, a lot of these tips can be applied to other tools as well. Things like the feather boards, the push sticks, the PPE, the power removal, the big one, the power removal. Guys, seriously, this is not an all-inclusive list, and I'm sure that you could think of other things on your own. These are just 10 that I thought I would bring to your attention, and they will most likely help those of you who may be new to the world of router tables. Please, guys, don't take this stuff for granted. You need these, and these to be able to do the work. So protect yourself and protect your work and just have fun with it. Guys, I want to thank you for tuning in this week. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. Click the bell so you don't miss the notification of future shows. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I honestly hope you're going to join me next week when I bring you yet another Alternative Tuesdays.